an early age, Russell O'Quinn started on a course that would lead him to become an internationally known test pilot and aircraft designer. Against his parents' wishes, Russell learned to fly and became a pilot at age 14. Russell went on to join the Air Force and later became an executive at Douglas Aircraft Company in 1956. After leaving Douglas in 1965, Mr. O'Quinn established Flight Test Research, the first civilian high-performance flight test company, and developed a new concept tactical jet fighter, manufactured the prototype, and is currently continuing to flight test and demonstrate to the U.S. military. Mr. O'Quinn has been featured in Life magazine as one of the top test pilots in the United States. He has been a guest on The Today Show and other programs. A television special about O'Quinn and his jet fighter program entitled Skyfox is currently aired on PBS. He is a nationally acclaimed, dynamic speaker, much in demand at events sponsored by governors, mayors, military agencies, the aerospace industry, as well as churches and Christian organizations. Russell's unique background and perspective allow him to reach many men and women who would never visit a church or Christian event, but who find themselves challenged and inspired by God's work in and through his life.
You're expecting Tom Cruise, perhaps? If it'll help your disappointment any, I used to look like Robert Redford. In fact, I opened a magazine here not long ago, and I saw a picture of Robert Redford in it without his makeup on, and it gave me perverse pleasure to notice he's beginning to look a lot like me. Pilots and red flag pilots, on occasion, we have to in order to continually evaluate the ever-changing weapon systems and the maneuvers that go along with them. And it's fun at this age to go out there and tangle with these youngsters of 25 and 30 years old. Salves my ego to have their unit commanders say, don't you go out there and fool with that old man unless you want to get embarrassed. But explore the campus. And the first thing that happened as I was walking along the sidewalks, I ran into a bunch of nuts carrying Bibles under their arms, and I knew instantly that my aunt had betrayed me and that I had fallen into a hotbed of religion. And I turned around and marched back to my room determined to pack and leave the next day. Those of you who are asking yourselves what a test pilot's doing wearing glasses, simple. I'm an old test pilot. First individual that's developed a system whereby you can modify an advanced aircraft engine to run on automotive fuel. Now, the thing that motivated me to do that, of course, is the shortage of cash to buy fuel with. And in my research, I discovered another major organization that had something to do with that. Found out the state of Arkansas was leaving a variety of vehicles around unattended on weekends that were used for road work. And I formed the 14 guys into what's known as the Fuel Brigade. My formal education advanced for me unexpectedly. I'll pass this on to some of you. I guarantee you this will increase your knowledge, especially if you've got a farming background. Did you know that a cow can outrun a horse? I made this discovery quite by accident one day. Coming out of a ravine, instead of a dead end, there was a large pasture in front of me, populated with a variety of horses and cows. And I want to tell you, a properly motivated cow will outrun a horse. Runway took off and climbed to about 30 feet, leveled off, retracted the landing gear in the flaps, accelerated out to the maximum speed that he could reach, pulled up and tried to emulate the maneuver that he'd ridden with me through so many times before. And at about 500 feet, he lost control of the airplane and pitched over and dove straight into the ground at about 150 miles an hour. Now, I had never seen death before. And to say that I was a shocked young man is a gross understatement. I'll never forget that day, as long as I live. But I wasn't shocked enough that my education didn't move forward again in ways I'd never dreamed that it would. It hit me like a runaway freight train that I was responsible. If anybody belonged in that pile of smoking wreckage, it was me and not my friend, and I knew it. It was a miracle, because if you'd have told me prior to this day I'd have ever had any interest whatsoever in studying that book, I'd have laughed in your face. God did not do that with me. He's allowed me to go on and achieve every dream I've ever had as a boy. Oh my. And then off and climbed to about 30,000 feet and leveled off. In the interim, the sun had come up, and it turned into one of these picture-perfect days, the azure blue sky, the puffy white clouds, and I had time to reflect for a little while before we got to the test area. And as I was sitting there contemplating this marvelous morning, why, it struck me that I was living right this instant every last dream I'd ever had as a boy. Clark Gable never flew an airplane like this one. They never conceived of the technology. You've been doing it for years. Would you take it from one who's had a lot of them come true, that unless God is the author of those dreams, you have a tragic disappointment awaiting you? They will not satisfy the way you think they will. And when they do come to pass, either all or in part, well, there are problems attached to them, difficulties that we never thought of. And as I was sitting there contemplating this, why, it struck me, you know, when Clark Gable did this, he had the strains of the New York Philharmonic Symphony Orchestra playing in the background. I had sweat running out of my helmet, clear down to my G-suit, and I wasn't looking forward at all to what I was going to have to do with this airplane, with the maneuvers that were printed out on the test card strapped to my knee board, and suddenly dreams were just not all they were cracked up. The next morning, why, we suited up and briefed and went out to the aircraft, and we always give to pilots or aircrew members that we feel have not flown in this caliber of airplane or in this environment a last minute, I'll call it an emergency briefing. It's really a critique to be sure they know how the seat operates, what our emergency procedures are, what our dialogue with the ground stations will be, etc. Having done all that, while we got on board, strapped in, I closed the canopy, started engines, taxied to the end of the runway, took off and climbed out to their practice area. Now, this new profile is about 30 minutes long in demonstration form. And if you've seen the movie Top Gun, we do every maneuver you saw in that movie plus a whole lot more. I've been doing that every morning after breakfast. I guarantee it'll uncage your eyeballs for you. On the ramp, I couldn't resist. I leaned over and said, "You want to borrow my cane?" 2,000 years ago, a stupendous thing happened on this earth. The creator of the universe took upon himself the form of a man, and he walked amongst us, and he shook the world. But indeed, I am briefing you about a flight that puts that for illustration to shame, and it's one you will take. And it'll be out of this world. And I wonder if you've ever prepared for it. Left. I had a radio on board that had his frequency, and I keyed the microphone, and I said, "Look to your left." And here, sitting on his left wing, was a beautiful, state-of-the-art jet fighter, and he broke into tears. And I said, "Listen, all I want you to do is calm down. I'm going to pull ahead of you just a few feet. I'm going to turn every light I've got on this thing. We're going to make a few practice turns, and when I turn, you turn." Words of life in our hands. I urge you to use what God has put in your place, in your hands, to pull up alongside of someone and lead them home.